Dana White is probably the single most influential individual in the world of MMA, turning the sport into a global powerhouse and making the UFC a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise. His outspoken personality and controversial leadership style have spawned a legion of detractors, but at the same time, his genuine love for the sport means that he has more than his fair share of supporters as well. But how much do you really know about him? Did you know that he suffers from a rare incurable disease? Or what about that time he got in serious trouble with the mob? Or how about his chaotic and complicated relationship with his mother? Join me and stay tuned for 10 fascinating facts about UFC President Dana White. Number 10. He used to work as a bellboy. You might think that Dana was always filthy rich, but that's just not the case. Dana spent his early years moving around America, and when it time for college, he headed to Massachusetts. However, he just didn't seem to fit into the world of higher education all that well, and he ended up dropping out of college twice. He obviously needed to make ends meet somehow, but without a college degree, he had to settle for whatever odd jobs people were willing to give him. I'm talking about stuff like laying asphalt and providing security for an Irish bar. Now, those types of jobs seem to fit his intimidating personality, but what really doesn't make sense is that he worked as a bellboy for Boston Harbor Hotel.
Where were you, like, when you were 20?
I was a bellman at the Boston Harbor Hotel in Boston. And one day I'm standing in the lobby and I literally go, what the am I doing here? And I walked out. I walked out of the job and I quit.
I guess you had to start somewhere. But Dana had also gotten into boxing around this time. And pretty soon, he transitioned into combat sports for the first time. Number 9. He started offering boxing lessons to underprivileged kids. Yep, the guy that rules the UFC with an iron fist actually wanted to help out the community. As surprising as it sounds, Dana really did contribute his boxing know-how to a charity program.
And what we did was we started this Get Kids Off the Street program. It's a great thing to do for the kids.
But this altruistic streak didn't last very long. Eventually, he realized there wasn't much money in his current job, so he began looking into more profitable endeavors. As funny as it sounds, Dana ended up giving boxercise lessons to businessmen and housewives.
Exercise classes in Boston.
Everybody says that I was a box aerobics trainer. That's what everybody said that was.
Can you imagine him having to suck up to rich dudes that can't even throw a punch? Coaching kids is one thing, but this job must have felt a bit demeaning. Of course, his destiny was elsewhere, and you'll never guess what made him leave his boring life in Boston behind. Number 8. He got run out of Boston by a mobster. At some point during his time in Boston, Dana ran afoul of the notorious mobster Whitey Bulger, who ran the Winter Hill gang in nearby Somerville. His enforcers walked up to Dana one day and told him he owed the boss around $2,500 just because he was doing business in their territory.
I was actually teaching a boxing class and these guys just walked right into the middle of the class and said, we need to talk to you.
In today's money, that would be equivalent to about $6,000. Let's remember that Dana was broke, so it was a lot of money for him at the time. He tried to ignore them, but they kept pestering him. And you can only ignore the mob so long before something awful happens to you. This back and forth continued until he got a threatening call from the gang, telling him to pay up by 1 in the afternoon of the next day, or else something bad would happen to him.
And then one day I was at my house and I got a call and they said, you have till tomorrow to pay us the money. And I said, or what? I said, well, you'll find out.
Remember, Dana was just a humble boxing instructor, so there was no way he'd have that much cash. He decided to pack up and book a flight to Las Vegas, and he hasn't looked back since then. This was where he met a couple of people that would join him in his race to the top. Number 7. He became Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell's manager. After arriving in Vegas, Dana kept his boxercise career going while also learning a bit of jiu-jitsu from UFC competitor John Lewis. Tito and Chuck also attended the practice sessions with Lewis, and that's where the fighters asked Dana to represent them, and he accepted.
For whatever reason, some of these guys start gravitating toward me and want me to manage them.
Right.
I started representing some of the UFC guys. So I start managing Chuck and Tito.
But let me tell you, His relationship with one of them didn't end up well at all. I'll tell you about it in one of the next segments, so stay tuned. Once in Vegas, he also met up with Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta at a mutual friend's wedding. And you probably don't know this, but he and Lorenzo were actually childhood pals. More importantly, his budding management career helped him connect the brothers to UFC co-founder Bob Meyrowitz, who was looking to sell the brand. The Fertittas ended up acquiring the UFC for $2 million, and since they needed someone to manage the struggling brand, they decided to hand the reins over to their old buddy. Needless to say, Dana has taken this role very, very seriously ever since. Number 6. Him and Donald Trump are buddies. Dana's expressed public support for Donald Trump multiple times, including endorsing both of his presidential runs. But it's not just cause he likes the guy's views. Trump and Dana are actually good friends who go way back, with their relationship stemming from mutual financial benefit. You see, the UFC had a hard time finding venues willing to host their events early on, and Trump Plaza was one of the few places that worked with them.
Arenas around the world refuse to host our events, except Donald Trump. He hosted our first 2 events at his venue.
Nearly 20 years ago, Dana and Don continued to associate with each other, which kind of makes sense from a business point of view. There's a lot of value in befriending billionaire real estate moguls after all. Now, Dana doesn't always get along with the people in his circle. He's notorious for beefing with a few of his fighters, and at one point, this led to a brawl between him and a UFC legend. Number 5. His beef with Tito Ortiz. White and former light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz had some of the most infamous feuds in MMA history. They often clashed in interviews over the years.
Tito's just a really dumb human being. He's not intelligent at all. He's very, very stupid.
Before White became the UFC boss, he was Ortiz's manager. Their bad blood almost led to a televised boxing match, but it didn't happen.
The last part of this thing is weighing in. If Tito doesn't show up, then that's it. I've done everything I was supposed to do.
197.
White shared the story with Conan O'Brien about a time when their tension turned physical. They were on a private plane to Japan along with UFC's co-owners, the Fertitta brothers, and Joe Silva, the matchmaker. White and Ortiz started joking around, but things got serious when Ortiz put White in a neck crank, a stronghold. White tapped out, signaling he wanted to stop, but Ortiz didn't let go. Worried about getting hurt, White punched Ortiz in the ribs until he released the hold. Then, they both stood up and started fighting for real. The plane was taking off, and the fight was so intense that it made the plane shake.
Fight in the plane, and we were literally taking off. And the plane was going like this, and
the Fertitta brothers had to step in and break it up. After that, White and Ortiz stayed apart for the rest of the flight, with White at the front and Ortiz at the back.
flight.
You're like kids that misbehave.
No, it's true.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not going with you anywhere.
Who do you think would have won if they actually fought in the boxing ring? Number 4. His biggest regret. Dana White has often shared his feelings about a big opportunity he missed back in 2013. He really wanted to bring Fedor Emelianenko, a huge name in the fight world, into the UFC. But boy, it wasn't easy. The biggest headache for Dana was dealing with Fedor's management, especially Vadim Finkelstein.
You guys think that I hate Fedor? I really don't hate Fedor. You know, his management, these guys are made the biggest in the history of all sports.
Those negotiations, they were tough. Then things got even more intense. Fedor's dad passed away, and suddenly retirement was on the table for him. It was a real bummer. Dana almost managed to set up one of the biggest fights in MMA history. We're talking about Fedor going up against Brock Lesnar, both in their primes. A fight like that would have been massive, both for the fans and the sport. Dana often reflects on this, thinking about what could have been. Number 3. Family life. Believe it or not, Dana White's love story is pretty sweet. He met his wife, Anne, way back in the 8th grade. Talk about childhood sweethearts. They tied the knot in 1996 and have built a beautiful family since then, with 2 sons and a daughter. In 2006, Dana decided to put down some roots in a big way. He bought a mansion in Pine Island Court, right in Las Vegas. And guess who he bought it from? Frank Fertitta III, a big name himself. The price tag? A whopping $1.95 million. Number 2. He has a rare medical condition. Dana's energetic demeanor and his surprisingly good physique might make you think that he's the picture of perfect health. But the truth is, he suffers from a rare neurological disorder called Meniere's disease. It's kind of like vertigo, or in Dana's words, vertigo on steroids.
When you get this, it's like vertigo on steroids.
Basically, the symptoms of this disease go from nausea, vomiting, loss of hearing, ringing in the ears, headaches, loss of balance, and sweating.
I got really dizzy, so I laid down for a little while and it went away. Then when I came back, I live in Vegas, and one day I just got to tell you, you can't hear, you lose your hearing completely, and everything starts spinning. There's no cure for it. And if you get it bad enough, what they end up doing is they do the surgery, they go in and cut the nerve.
Right. But
and after they cut the nerve, you have to learn how to walk again.
It's risky.
Yeah.
As you can see, this doesn't sound fun at all. While he only got diagnosed in 2012, he had probably struggled with it for a while. A condition like that can end your career. And a couple of years after he found out about it, he got caught up in something else that threatened everything he'd built. Number 1. His mom hated him. She published a book back in 2011 talking about how he basically left his family behind when he became successful. According to her, Dana promised his mom that he'd hired the best doctors in the country to take care of his sick grandma, but he just conveniently forgot about it, and his grandma passed away because of his neglect. That's just one of the things she despised him for, but I probably shouldn't say. There's no real evidence that any of this is true. Dana never really talks about his parents, although he's mentioned that there's stuff in his childhood that he wants to protect his own children from. His relationship with his folks was so bad that he said he felt nothing when they died, which apparently happened very recently. This just goes to show how complicated things were between them. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Go ahead and tell us your valuable opinion in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn the notification on so you won't miss any of our videos. And that's it for today. Until then, remember to protect yourself at all times.